Welcome to Alpha Wolf Capital. I'm Tim, and I want to personally thank you for stopping by. Between the OTC, New York Stock Exchange, and NASDAQ, there are over 22,000 companies traded publicly. I feel that small businesses are the backbone of America. The number one reason for this channel is to help small companies gain exposure with potential consumers, investors, even partners. Take, for example, today's guest, Allan Evans with Unusual Machines. Unusual Machines is positioning itself to become the premier distributor and manufacturer of parts for American-made drones. Recent legislation, the war in Ukraine, and different use cases for drones positions Unusual Machines extremely well for growth. But I will let Allan tell you more about that in just a moment. It's important for you to understand that this is not a paid-for promotion. I do not collect compensation for the interviews I do here. I do look for companies that could potentially provide an above-average return on investment, but that is not the primary reason for the channel. There's a thing called impact investing. It's tied to environmental, social, and governance. I think that is a very narrow definition of what impact can be. By helping a small company become a large corporation, if you and I can become ambassadors of a product because the values of that company align with our own, think of all the jobs that will be created as that small company becomes a big company. Think about the community that that company is in. Typically, they thrive along with the company. This channel is to help companies that are relatively unknown become known so that they can build a following and they can have brand ambassadors that share their vision, share their mission, and are willing to do what they can to help have a positive impact on humanity. That's what this channel is all about. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. I am not a financial advisor. I recommend highly that before buying any security, you speak to a financial advisor and do your own due diligence. Hey everybody, Tim from Alpha Wolf Capital coming at you with a follow-up interview to an exciting story that has some meaningful catalysts right around the corner, and has had a couple of really nice press releases in the last week or so. So Allan Evans from Unusual Machines. Allan, just to give everybody a quick rundown, what does Unusual Machines do?
Appreciate it, Tim. Unusual Machines makes drone parts for small drones, and we also do final assembly of drones, generally for what's called first-person view, which are the sport drones. You might see them in drone racing or in a lot of the videos in Ukraine. It's really what we do, and we're trying to onshore more and more manufacturing and drone supply chain for the smaller drones to the U.S.
Okay. Last time you were on, we talked about that right now you could use China drones to survey a bridge or whatever, the border, right? Come 2026, that will not be the case anymore, right?
For the government, for sure. And there's debate in legislation called the CCCP, Countering China's Communist Party Drones Act, that is being moved around and is being considered for the future, which would kick out at least DJI from everybody. But already into law is the American Securities Drone Act, which says no Chinese drones for the federal government dollars in 2026.
Right. So right now, there's not a big sense of urgency, but that window is shrinking every day, right?
Yeah, I think come January after the election and everybody sort of figures out the next budget and everything, that it'll become a big deal in January, February this coming year.
All right. Speaking of budgets, so why don't you give us the catalyst that we see in the very near future, like maybe in a couple of weeks, right? Is what for drone companies?
For not just drone companies, but a whole lot of smaller defense related companies like ours, is the government procurement cycle. This is going to sound really boring, but basically, the government passes a budget every year that, hopefully occurs in October. And then there's a whole bunch of money that you have until September 30th to allocate it in what's called use it or lose it. And so basically, everybody gets their budgets, and then contracting takes a while because it's a big company, right? They got to go to procurement and they got to get it vetted, and they have to do anti-competitive stuff, all things to reduce corruption, which is probably good. And then they have to get it all finalized and issued all before midnight on September 30th. What's crazy about this year is we didn't pass a budget till April, right? Remember how long that continuing resolution was?
Yeah.
So then the individuals in charge of these different groups didn't get their budgets, even know what they were till May. So anybody buying anything from boots to night vision goggles to drones just knew the amount of money they had in May. All right. So then there's this mad scramble to get quotes and contracts and figure out everything and go in and rack them and stack them. And then this runs into vacation. 4th of July, big holiday for the Defense Department and the US government, and it should be.
Right.
Summertime, kids are out of school. So it almost looks like Christmas in the summer in terms of getting stuff done, because if 2 or 3 people are out, even if 7 are in, like, goes to sit on the next desk, it's totally understandable too. Glad people are taking vacation. So right about now, into August, into September, is this madcap frenzy to get these contracts done. Normally, more of these are done earlier in the year, right? You'd see some stuff because normally these folks have their budgets in October. So you'd start to see contracts even as early as February. This year, because the budgets show up so late, it's a whole year of money crammed into this really tight and delayed window. And so when you think about it, you're like, oh, okay, August and September are going to be these, all the contracts that are going to happen for the whole year, or almost all of them, that are smaller outside of programs of record, will very likely be issued in August and even more so in September of this year. And, that includes everything we're in the running for as a subcontractor. If you look, like the Fang drone from Red Cat Holdings that we're announced as a provider for, anything related to Fang will probably come in August and September. And then, and everybody is particularly urgent this year because they have no idea what next year's budgets will be because of the election. Nobody expects to know till January. So there's a lot of interest. And then for drones, because of all the awareness and all the replicator initiative and everything else, there's this added amount of money and pressure to allocate money for drones, but all of the process for a big organization plus a delayed budget cycle. So, I mean, it's going to be hectic and sudden. And I think people, like, the timing could be any time starting next week that this starts to happen and runs through the end of September. So, like October 10th, you're like, okay, who won?
We can breathe, right?
Yeah.
So I think the real key point that about this budget is if they don't use it by September 30th or 31st, they lose it. That money that money doesn't just stay there for them to use next year, right?
Not only that, but they're probably where the budget gets reduced next year. Because the first thing a lot of the budgets do is say, how much did you spend last year? Oh, you didn't spend everything? Oh, you don't need that much again.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense, right? So you want to make sure you spend.
Definitely. Everybody with a budget wants to spend their whole budget. And if other people can't spend it, they actually want to go take their budget and spend it too.
That's a great place to be heading into the end of the summer, right?
I would rather already have contracts awarded. It's not a bad place to be, but it would have been nice if anybody would have been in a position to get wins in June. It's a little nerve wracking where you're like, oof,
All right.
but it's exciting for sure.
let's talk about the NDAA approved. And I got to tell you, I saw the price of this thing and I thought, wow, that is impressive. But the flight controller, the FPV flight controller.
Yeah, so we announced that not too long ago. I think about the last low in your chart behind you. We announced our first made in the USA product, which is a drone flight computer for FPV. It is fully government approved, so NDAA compliant. We put it out there. It's currently undergoing Blue submission, which is the defense audit to then be Blue UAS approved, which would be that takes a little time. So we're in approval process for that. We may need to make a few changes. We may not. And the launch of that.
What is the Blue? What is that exactly? What is that
So
program?
Blue is where the Defense Innovation Unit, the DIU, has the Blue registry that is the drones and the drone parts that have been fully audited for cybersecurity and everything. So the government can just buy them and they don't need to do any ATOs or anything else.
Got it.
So there aren't a lot of drones on there. Like Skydio's got a drone on there. Teal has a drone on there. Anduril does. And then there's the Blue framework, which are approved drone parts. An example would be like the NVIDIA Jetson is a drone computer. And so we're trying to put the first FPV drone computer on that list. So we announced it, we came out with it, we put out pre-orders, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive. Not just from our consumer customers who are really excited that we're doing made in the USA and government compliant, but it's also driven a lot of enterprise interest. You know, we really want to be a supplier to companies that supply the government. And we've gotten a ton of outreach and significant exploratory purchases, you know, not just one, but, you know, tens, hundreds. And I think that launch and the added interest in the ways that we're going, we already expect it to have a significant impact on our Q3, which is calendar Q3. And think it could even help us be more successful in these last couple of months where people are figuring out where to spend budget. But we've been really surprised, and everybody's been really great about being interested, being supportive, and you nailed the number one thing. We are price competitive. It sort of shocked everybody. They're like, "Oh, we thought it'd be 3 times as much, and you'd go gouge the government." No, like we're trying to be a supplier that, you know, respects the American taxpayer, the government buyer, and our customer, and we're really excited about it. Now we can kind of onshore that effectively.
You can pre-order it right now for $49.95, right?
You can. We have a pre-order discount, www.rotoriot.com. If you know what FPV is and you want a flight controller, go do that. If you don't, go to Rotor Riot and get an FPV starter kit and learn to fly a drone. You know?
So, you know, I gotta tell you, man, I got a drone.
Okay.
I don't know where it is now because it got away from me.
That happens.
I think it's in my neighbor's yard somewhere. I definitely have to work on the whole drone thing, right? I mean, it's fun. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind it will be really, really fun when I figure it out. I'm gonna have to get another drone, but the first person view I think would be so cool, right? I mean, you feel like you're in a cockpit of this thing.
Totally. It's a blast. And my favorite are the micros, like the smaller ones. You can fly them around your house in the winter or whatever. And they're not like, you don't lose them forever away or you crash into something and it doesn't destroy it. But then you also feel like you're in Gulliver's Travels. You feel like you're a little midget flying a drone like underneath your kitchen table or whatever. And you see that they're using these. I mean, you'll see videos for like inspections of pipes, or, you know, you've got a bunch of companies that use them for really practical purposes. But for me, for the fun, I'm a micro flyer personally, just because, you know, whatever. My house is great. I don't want to get off the couch.
I saw. What did I see? Did Rotor Riot just did a? It was like a commercial, I think, for was it for tire company? Amazing flying. I mean, it flew through this factory, through the tire. Unbelievable flying, man. It's just so. Drones are so cool, right? I mean, just but they're also used. I mean, Red Cat. I know that you just had an announcement about Red Cat, which is impactful for the company, right? In a very
Oh
positive.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot there, but let's go back to what you just said for a second. You're right. These types of drones are absolutely used in cinema. Michael Bay had used it in his movies. Some of our pilots have done some of the Justin Bieber music videos. I think people forget how awesome drones are and how big the market is for outside of defense. Like defense is our first move into enterprise because there's obvious interest there right now. But I do think long term, those sorts of applications are really where you're going to see it sort of enter all our lives. And I think that's awesome. And I really appreciate that that's what you think of because most people are like, oh, yeah, like this. And everybody that we work with and do this for, they're super excited about all those applications.
I mean,
And that's why we're not a defense contractor directly.
if you're a photographer and you want to take some incredible images of landscapes or waterfalls or I mean whatever, right? I don't care what it is. It could be birds, I guess, in the air. I mean, there are you could have a field day with a drone, right? You could come up with some
No,
incredible imagery off of the drone.
yeah, yep. And there's so many other use cases. People do solar farm inspection with thermal cameras. I've with FPV drones, I've watched people wrangle cattle after they've gotten out. Like, and who knows? We're at the very start of it, and so I do think the long term marketplace is. We're still living in a 2.5D world, right? We walk around on the ground, we got elevators, and drones make it 3D, and so it's pretty exciting.
I know drones were being used. I think it was when Canada had the big fire up there
Mm-hmm.
with uh with UV to detect hotspots that were
Yep.
still sitting behind. I mean, there are so many things that
One
drones
of
can.
my favorites is there are several companies that make drones to wash windows of
Oh, yeah.
devices.
Those are cool.
And they're amazing. They save a ton of money. And people are like, what about the noise? I'm like, have you ever listened to the compressor? Drone's quieter than the compressor. You're fine, you know? But I think we're very interested in helping supply all the industry. But and so I really appreciate just randomly walking into that. But I think that makes what we're doing a much bigger market opportunity long term, for the longs out there. Because we're microcap, they're longs. Hopefully, those are the investors we'd like. For the longs out there, there's many,
There's
many years of
huge,
growth.
huge. I mean, look, you got EA Sports. People are filling up stadiums to watch people play games.
Yeah.
I would suggest watching drones race through the air and through these obstacle courses is way more fun to watch.
And so Drone Racing League just sold for $250 million, and they were on ESPN doing that. So I think there are other people out there who agree with you, who see the market emerging. And I think as entertainment products like that show up or other applications, you're already seeing awareness just in defense.
Yep.
But as you see in these other segments, the market just continues to bloom larger and larger.
I mean,
But we can pull back from forever if you want and go more to the next year or two. If it, yeah,
I could see once these drones are capable of, picking up, dropping stuff. I could see competitions, all kinds of interesting competitions with racing drones, right? It's not just about how fast you can get through a tire or whatever. I can see all kinds of applications where picking things up, dropping things off precisely, and all of that. It's going to be interesting to see where all this goes, man.
oh
And
yeah,
it's
it's
not
going
going
to be
away.
very interesting. No, it's definitely coming, and the FAA is really forward looking and very active in all this, and the rest of the agencies are. It's very much an infrastructure technology. And I think when people go, oh, defense, remember that the freeway system in the US was a defense project that passed by 6 votes. But that's why we have 4-hour delivery with Amazon. So, that started as defense. Most of the major airlines, all the pilots came back from World War II. And that's why we have jet travel. That was defense. The internet, on which we're talking right now,
Right.
Started out of defense and very quickly moved to a much larger segment. And so, we as a company are not trying to be a defense contractor. We're trying to be a drone supplier. And we think that it's not going to be limited to defense, but instead it's going to very quickly sort of come out, and that the defense money coming this year and maybe next year, because there's real interest, are just going to create this sort of fostering that causes this to just explode as an entire industry. And the stuff we're talking about now is really what has our whole team excited long term. But we know that we have to thrive, survive and thrive short term in the current market dynamics to be there long term.
You see, I think you've been around long enough. When I was younger, a lot younger, there was you were proud to buy American. It was a theme, right? I mean, but it wasn't just a theme. It was ingrained in who we were. We were proud to buy American-made products, right? If it had an American-made, made in America tag on it, Harley Davidson. I bought Harleys, right? Why? Because it was made in America. I mean, that's just that was the reality of it, right? We've kind of gotten away from that with all the big box stores, and everybody wants things cheaper, cheaper, cheaper. Okay, we could do that, but we cost a lot of American jobs, number one, right? And you don't have the American quality, right? And I think the fact, when I saw the price of that, I expected that controller to be easily $100. In my head, it was $100, right? I saw that price, I was like, wow, that was impressive to me. And it's made in America, right? Drones that are made in America, I think, is an exciting thing. What does it mean? It means we're creating jobs, right? For people right here. I mean, the busier you get, the more people you have to hire, right?
Yep.
And that's a good thing for America, right?
Yeah, I think it's even more important in certain industries, right? So I think any emerging industry that becomes an infrastructure, if you have domestic work on it, those people get smart and then build the stuff on top of it. So in the US, we built silicon initially. So then we became the place that built computers. So then we became the birthplace of the internet. So then we were the ones who really did the smartphone and cellular. And it's because there's knowledge and access to that previous thing and infrastructure that the next generation can build on top of. So I don't think we have to dominate drones globally or anything, but I think without a domestic base, not just in the finished product, if you look at like a Skydio or a Teal or an Anduril, or in the software or in the components, that's how then drone delivery can go happen in coordination with the FAA. That's how freight can happen if Boeing does automated logistics and coordinates with the local stuff. And so I do agree that not only are we making jobs, but I think there's certain classes of manufacturing that enable new infrastructure that not just create jobs now, but continue to allow for technological excellence and create more jobs in the future. And I think drones sit in one of those categories. And that's why we feel so strongly about it.
No, I completely agree. So let's talk about what you just announced. Was it yesterday or today?
It was yesterday.
It was yesterday. With Red Cat, right? This is a big announcement for the shareholders.
Yeah, so we helped facilitate a private transaction where Red Cat, was looking to sell their position to some investors. So really positive all the way around. We, as part of finalizing our transaction, we had a working capital adjustment we were going to have to pay this year. We were able to get that added to our debt from the acquisition and get that debt moved out to November. So instead of paying $2 million this year and $2 million on a note next August, it became a $4 million note due a year from November. That gives us 2 of these government sales cycles to not be distracted and to get there and do it. They also traded in their common shares for preferred shares that have an equity blocker. So they're just 1-to-1. It's the same, basically, fully diluted share count. But what it really means for shareholders is that there's no longer shareholder concentration. Nobody has 40% of the shareholder vote. So anything that requires shareholder approval, most financings, any acquisitions, it requires authentic shareholder approval. The last thing is, the investors were really interested in putting money in and owning more of Unusual Machines. They were buying unregistered securities, debt note. I mean, you can't do that if you're a short. Like that's a long term, that's people moving money. And at the same time, very helpful for Red Cat, like really excited about everything they're doing. Jeff's still on our board. We're still very close partners because it doesn't mean, when they have that kind of position, they have to roll us into their finances, right? As they're going through an audit and you have to do full, like we're a subsidiary and all the other things. And so this sort of cleans all that up without, them unlocking with their equity coming to the market in August or any of these other things that could really put a lot of negative pressure on our share price from sort of, just kind of arbitrary nothing. So we're really excited about it. See it as a win-win for everyone, and it really puts us in a position where shareholders have a lot more power in the company now, which is a little bummer for me, harder to get stuff done, but
No, I don't think so, Alan. I think you could be pretty convincing, man. I think people, I would say you come across as a very straight shooter, right? I mean, you just are a very transparent guy. You're a smart guy, and you're in an exciting industry. I think you are positioned so well for what I think is going to be an explosive opportunity for a long time. I don't think I don't consider this a fad, right? This is going to become a key component to a lot of different industries, construction. I can just think of so many that it's going to be here for a long, long time to come.
I agree with you. And your fad reminds me of a weird. So when I was in graduate school, long time ago now, I had the opportunity to go to Japan and sit next to one of the people that filed the first patent for a cell phone camera. This is back like Motorola Razr, right?
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, all right, you bust your butt, whatever. You maybe in my life at the time could have the impact that the guy who invented the cell phone camera had. And you look, and pretty naively to me at the time, look at what the cell phone camera is enabling. QR codes, like you can go measure the price tag, Instagram, Snapchat, this Zoom. You're like, oh, what? So hubris on my part, like I maybe not, but even the things that seem small today, when they're early and they're like this, can become these really big things. And that, as life goes on and the impact of the cell phone camera becomes more and more pronounced, I'm constantly reminded to not take the future for granted. Right. So we're guessing. We'll own that we're guessing. We're guessing that this year the government's going to put money into this category. We're guessing that our Made in the USA approach is going to resonate. But hardware and these things, they're virtuous cycle. So let's say, and I'm making up stuff totally here, that there's $10 million going to this category this year, and we win 4 million of it. Well, if there's 50 million next summer, we're already the leader because we're ahead, and winners win harder in hardware. And so then you would expect that next year, instead of 40% of it, we'd probably win 60% of it as the quality. Oh, suddenly that's $30 million. And so we're trying to we're guessing the market timings right now. We're trying to move before anyone else. And we're just trying to build a giant snowball to create an avalanche. And people will look around in a couple of years and be like, oh, they'll watch this interview and they'll either be like, oh, he was right, 10 Ds, or nah, he was wrong and it fizzled and failed. But that's our commitment, is to that thesis. And we're all in to go after it because we believe right now is the right time.
Do you have any kind of conception of what kind of inventory levels you're going to need to carry? I mean,
No, because most of the enterprise customers will allow delivery time. So what we do on the retail side is we like to get somewhere between 4 and 6 turns a year. So
okay,
you'd expect our inventory to be, quarter of our revenue. If you were going to look ever at our inventory value, you'd expect it to be a quarter of our annual revenue.
okay,
But um, we get deposits and stuff, for that from a lot of the customers. So we'd like to try to increase the turns, but again, with supply chains and the stack up and stuff, we
and
being out of being
that's
out
what
of stock is bad.
that's actually kind of what I'm thinking about, right? I mean, you think about the supply chain issues that we had when COVID hit. I mean, and we're still feeling some of the impact of that, right?
Yep. Yep.
Uh, and that's where, as a distributor like yourself, that's where I would get concerned, right? Because I don't want to have that. Oh, sorry, don't have it. Don't know when I'll be
So,
able to get it to you.
so this is the best part about our consumer business model. We're doing $5 million a year consumer, which means we already have inventory rolling through. We have deep supplier relationships. We have material flow coming, but we also don't sell everything under the sun. We curate it to the stuff we only believe in. So we have an order of magnitude fewer SKUs than our competitor. And that means we have even more of them. So when people come to us or when we do these things, we don't only do 10, like, and that flow then starts to create some of these assurances for other folks. But we are big enough that we can place those first orders to not sputter and disappoint enterprise customers. And that's extremely important as a supplier to be reliable.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. Um, what else did you do for Red Cat? What else did you provide Red Cat? This was it. Was it?
Well, we're doing their Fang as a partnership. We're the supplier for all the parts for their Fang drone. So when you look at them going to market, people are looking for FPV. I'm sure if you watch any of the interviews with Jeff, he'll tell you they do ISR and then they'll fly in FPV drones. And it's very difficult and very different to manufacture the two different ones and very different price sensitivity wise, but
Okay.
also just the structure of companies. So a defense supplier has to do checks when anybody walks in, has to hire all US persons. Like there's all these overhead costs to sell directly to the government that we don't have. So by being a supplier to them of parts for their FPV drone, it's a great relationship where we can keep their cost basis low and then they can offer their family of systems. No, and we're really excited to see where that goes.
That's fantastic. All right, Alan, look, I know you're a busy guy because I see you everywhere now, right? But you think we covered everything? Is there anything that we missed that you want to highlight?
I think no, we pretty much covered everything. I would say right now is the time for anybody who's looking for a high risk or high reward, low risk swing trade, right? Because of this government cycle, not just us, there's a basket of companies there. You can tell them what they are. I'm not a financial advisor, but I would say, between here in the middle of October, I think we have a really good base and the opportunity to just, if we win some of these contracts, just be very successful at the company, which I hope would be reflected in the share price.
So let's say if you win, let's just go through a hypothetical right now. So I mean, where are you at? How much debt do you have?
$4 million.
What was that?
4 million.
4 million. Okay. And for you to be, what would you consider a really good quarter for you to put up that you would be just elated with?
So for me, I'll be excited at a run rate of about 3 million a quarter, maybe a little more, because around there we should be break even or cash flow positive, not counting things like servicing debt. So we're not that far away. We're like really scrappy. And then I would say though, in terms of book to business,
Yeah.
I mean, we're in competition. I don't know where we're at for likelihood for tens of millions of dollars this summer.
Right.
So we don't need to book all that. I don't even know if it'll all get awarded for us to start to feel really good. But some of that hits, and you'll be like, "Well, Alan, how's your boat?" And I'll be like, "I haven't had time to find one. I'm too busy working."
All right.
And then,
I just want to highlight here real quick the you actually have what's called a reverse head and shoulders pattern, which is actually a bullish move or a bullish setup for. And if you look at what you're talking about right now and how things fundamentally line up with what you see on the chart, it's kind of interesting timing, right? So I'm going to move my little wolf here out of the way. Oops, not that one. Come on.
I don't know anything about charting, so this is an education.
That's okay. I didn't know anything about charting either. I was always a fundamental guy. I could never understand how anybody could look at a chart. What the hell is that going to tell you about where a stock is going? Right? Never figured it out. And then 15, no, maybe 16, 17 years ago, I took a course, and now it's the first thing I look at.
Okay.
What it tells you.
Tell me about my chart. I don't.
So here's what it tells you. It tells you where the areas of support and resistance are, and you can tell because of where there's a lot of congestion at a certain price level, right? Like right now, if you look at your chart, you've got this 175 that is acting as the resistance level right now. This is where we are today, right? Well, if you look over here, it was resistance over here too. And then it wound up giving up and you pull back. It was also resistance over here, right? But over here, way over here, it was acting as support. After you IPO'd, it came down to this level and it went sideways for, a couple of weeks or whatever. Let's see, what was that? Yeah, a couple of weeks. It kind of went sideways. You built a little bit of a base there. Once you lost that and closed below it, that was the beginning of this downdraft, right? So your overall trend was from the upper left to the lower right. Well, if you look here, and I've done a poor job of drawing these lines, but you could gradually see that you just put in a higher low, right? So you had this low, and then you had a bounce up to that resistance area of 175. You came back down, but you didn't go back down and test that low, right? You actually put in a higher low, and now you're right back up here at this 175. So you're testing that area. And what's good, healthy action is when you get to that level of resistance and you kind of go sideways, because what are you doing? You're building up energy, right? You build up energy so that when you do break through that glass ceiling, right, you've got the energy to get through it and stay above it. So at some point, I would think that the 175 becomes your floor. It goes from being your ceiling to now your floor, right? The next area where you'll probably see some resistance is $2. Round numbers always have psychological meaning to people for whatever reason. So $2 will be not much of one, but it'll probably be a little resistance area. The big one will be around $2.40, because that's kind of where you went sideways again up here, right? That'll probably act as resistance, and then that will wind up becoming. And then it's what was the highest you've ever been? I think the highest you've been is what, $5, $5.50? Yeah. So this will be the fun part when you get above and you close above 350, because even on the day that you went up to 550, it didn't stay there, it didn't close there, right? Yep. When you close above $3.50, or is it 390? No, it's 390. When you close above 390, that's when you're in blue sky. I mean, that's like you have no resistance.
I'm hoping we have that conversation in October. The next couple months is match my excitement level. It'll be a fun conversation for you to tell me what the chart does next.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great, man. So, I mean, the chart is lining up. I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm not telling anybody to go buy the stock. That's not what I do. I'm saying this is a very compelling story at a very compelling time. There are definitive catalysts that are right around the corner. And as Allan said, as possibly as early as next week, right? Where you start to see hints of these things. So this is, I would imagine these budgets are pretty decent sized budgets. I'm just guessing, right? Uh, if you're not following the story, go to Unusual Machines, go to their investor alerts, sign up for their investor alerts. You'll get their everything that comes out in the press will be delivered nicely right to your email. You can wake up in the morning and say, when you see the stock jumping, you won't have to go search for the news. It'll be right there in your email box, right? That's what I suggest. I do not think that I think the stock is undervalued at its current level with everything that they have going on. Allan's a straight shooter, and I can't wait to see where this company goes and have you back soon.
Hey, Tim, I really appreciate it. It's always nice to learn something new. And so thank you for the chart tutorial. And I look forward to talking again next time. I hope you have a great day.
Yeah, you do the same. Hold on one second. I'm going to shut this down.
No problem.
Thank you for tuning in to another CEO interview here at Alpha Wolf Capital. Today we had Allan Evans from Unusual Machines, ticker symbol UMAC. I hope you enjoyed today's interview. And if you did, please do us a favor. Give us a like. How about giving us a share? And make sure you smash that subscribe button. All of those things are super important to us here at Alpha Wolf, and we appreciate you taking the time to do that. Until next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Capital wishes you the very best of success.